Welcome to the Martech Matrix, the podcast where technology meets marketing and the future becomes now. Every week, we dive deep into the world of marketing technology, exploring how digital tools, AI, data analytics, and innovative strategies are reshaping the marketing landscape. Join us as we navigate through this complex matrix, interviewing industry experts, dissecting emerging trends, and decoding strategies that are setting the pace in this digital age. Your host, Sean Simon, has spent the last 30 years leading a variety of Martech companies from broadcast.com to Criteo. Now he is the co-founder of the Cogent Collective, a community where marketing and e-commerce leaders come together to discover and vet solutions that address their business needs, bypassing all the noise that comes with technology searches. Learn about the community and see if it's a fit for you at cogentcollective.com. Today, Sean speaks with Brooke Partelow, founder and CEO of NeonPixel. NeonPixel was designed to take television from the old school immeasurable brand campaign world into the fully tracked and attributed performance marketing world. With a deep understanding of e-commerce and performance marketing, Brooke realized TV advertising was going through a major evolution, from TV being a channel that was rigid and loosely trackable to a precision performance marketing channel. Brooke saw an opportunity to create NeonPixel and help great brands use TV to drive profitable, attributable conversions. Now, get ready to enter the Matrix.
Welcome to episode 7 of the Martech Matrix. I'm your host, Sean Simon. Now let's welcome Brooke Partelow into the Matrix.
Hey, Sean. Thanks for having me here.
It's great to have you here, Brooke. Thanks for being here. We're really excited to talk about CTV. It's one of those topics that everybody's talking about and trying to figure out. So let's dig in. But before we get to the billion-dollar question of how to track, measure, and optimize TV, can you share with us why you started NeonPixel? What was the business problem that you set out to solve?
Yeah. So great question to start out. I've been in the performance marketing, what we call now performance marketing space for 17, 18 years, dating myself when I say that. The thread through my entire career has been working with marketers who are pressured with using budgets very wisely and tracking and attributing everything that they do. Historically, these folks have stayed away from television because it has lacked sophistication on tracking and attribution. 3 years ago, kind of beginning of COVID times, I started to piece together this idea that with the right tech stack and the right thinking, that there actually is a way to make CTV a real performance marketing channel. So that is the venture that we have been on for the last 3.5 years here.
Well, that's exciting. So 3.5 years since you started the company, and how long has the product been in market? Since the very beginning, or did it take some time to develop the product?
Took some time. Yeah. We are on year 3 of customers, but the first year of customers was not an entire year.
Got it.
Yep.
Okay. So when we think about TV, right? Old school TV is Nielsen, it's surveys, it's panels. Not an exact science. What do you do differently than old school technology to convince a marketer of the performance that ad is actually driving?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So on the tracking has to be done cross device because you can't click on a TV commercial on your living room television, right? And so we had to start with a very tight cross-device tracking methodology that allows us to see, did we just show a commercial to a living room TV? And did someone that lives in that household then pick up another device, go to the site and browse and maybe buy something? And so, without getting into full details, to answer the question, we're able to do that very well. And then that tracking on site is a part of their attribution. And whether it's Google Analytics or the various MTAs that folks are using these days, we're able to communicate with those systems in real time when we see a visit occur on site coming from TV.
Got it.
So that's really the big secret, is just this ability to track and attribute.
So cross device, let's just explain that a little bit further. So we're
Hmm.
talking about like a mobile phone, right? So your mobile phone is on the same IP address as your television and you're able to map those two. So essentially your mobile phone becomes that third party cookie that we've grown to love
Yep.
or hate, depending who you are in
Yeah.
digital.
That's right. So when we're serving an impression, we're creating an identity graph of that household in the background. We're capturing their IP address. We're associating that IP address to all the devices that are frequently on that network. So that's where the house is and who lives there essentially from a device standpoint, right? And
Yeah.
each of those devices has a unique ID. We're able to use tags on the advertiser site to watch for device IDs that had recently been served a commercial on their living room TV on the same network. So
That's
that's the
amazing
basis of our cross-device tracking.
because I think the biggest challenge with sort of any panel based thing is like, oh, well, there's two parents, there's two children in the household, maybe a grandparent. Like, how do you know who it is? And eventually, you just have to figure that out when you're tracking them upon the website visit.
Hmm.
Who at least was the converter? Okay, that's interesting. So, what types of brands have you seen migrate toward not just CTV but performance based CTV? Because I think there's probably a little bit of difference between branding branding brands and
For
performance
sure.
brands.
Yeah, and we're very focused on the latter, the performance side of things. TV has been used for years by brand marketers, and those folks don't necessarily require the tracking and attribution that we on the performance side of the house are requiring, demanding to keep our jobs right every day.
Right.
And so we're working with brands that have been probably struggling to scale, especially, Meta has been more and more difficult to spend at scale over the last few years for a lot of folks out there. And so people are looking for just incremental new to file channels to drive traffic to their site. But frankly, they're also looking for replacements of the scalability of Meta potentially. And so we do really well with performance marketers that probably didn't wake up this morning saying, I need to get on connected TV, or had maybe even never done connected TV before. These are folks that are frustrated with search and social and are looking for new, very lucrative channels to tap into.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's a conversation we keep having with our members as we talk about third party cookies going away. Obviously, half of them are already gone, but because they're going away or because they're half gone, the media costs of other channels, those walled gardens, Googles, Amazons of the world,
Mm-hmm.
along with Meta, the prices keeps going up and up, and the
Mm-hmm.
efficiencies keep going down and down to the point where they're able to open their minds up to other channels that they once thought were outside of their budget.
That's exactly right.
Especially if someone like you can make it
Yep.
performance.
Yep.
That's
And
amazing.
just to piggyback on that and circle back to something we said earlier, not just be able to track it, but also track it in their own ballpark of their attribution and tracking. There's a lot of solutions out there for television to give you some kind of siloed reporting data. And that feels better than nothing, right? To have some sense of what took place. But, it's ironic because channels like search and social would never have this volume of spend unless they had the precision on tracking and attribution that we have. And so that's the big difference.
Yeah, and that's totally fair. We work with some mixed media optimization platform
Mm-hmm.
partners that are looking at search even, which everyone thought was like the golden child in terms of efficiency. And it turns out that it's people that were really searching for brands based on upper funnel tactics that they saw. They just were lazy or couldn't remember their domain, so they went there and they
Mm-hmm.
searched for it and they clicked. But it turns out that they don't deserve all the credit. Um,
Yep.
how do how do brands think about since you have all this measurement, right?
Mm-hmm.
How do you think, or how do the brands think about integrating CTV now into a broader marketing plan? Like, how does
Yeah.
it work with other channels?
Yeah, great question. So we have really strict visit attribution rules that we put on our traffic because, frankly, we're using view throughs, right? Again, you can't click on a TV commercial, and you and I know this from our retargeting days back in the day. The maybe kind of dirtiness of thinking about view throughs and attribution, right?
Yeah.
And the big argument, sorry, cat's out of the bag now,
No.
15 years later, right? So the deal is we had to figure out a way to not to alleviate that concern of overlap on attribution. If they're going to use this as their next big performance channel, we can't make it an even bigger attribution concern for them. That won't fly. And so the methodology that we use is, if we have these rules again of, if a visit happens from a device that was home where we just served a TV commercial, we might give TV credit for that visit and subsequent conversion, but we do not take credit if that user used other marketing UTMs to get there. This is where we get the performance marketers. So if they click through paid search or paid social for an email campaign, we will completely step aside for that. It's only when they're directly typing in the URL or using organic search to get to the site. Now, with that being said, we're technically undercounting visits for television, but we had to pick a horse, right? And we would rather take the more conservative angle where the marketer can sleep at night, knowing this is not just 20%, 50% more overlap with their other channels. And if credit is being given to TV, this is really incremental, not just poaching credit type of revenue we're driving here.
Well, okay. So all right, I'm going to dig into that a little bit more because I have a question about it, and it's not necessarily questioning your technology, but the idea of ambient listening. And we've all, this happens all the time in my house. We're talking about something, and boom, there it is on our Instagram feed, right? Now, let's say a TV commercial comes on, we're watching a show, and we start talking about it. And then we pick up our phone, and we're on Instagram, or we go to the website. Now, you're competing. You're saying it's the TV, in that example, the TV commercial drove me to my phone. I picked up my phone to go to the website, but I also saw an ad on my Instagram because I happen to be scrolling, because I can't do one thing, right? I have to do multiple things. And you guys are willing to concede credit to Instagram in that case if you think that there's any conflict.
That's exactly right. And we can report on the back end, what percentage of visits we're losing credit to by other channel. So the big culprit is brand search, right? Like, a lot of users don't type in URLs. They'll just go to Google, type in their best guess at the brand name, press return, and the only link above the fold is brand paid search. And so we report that back to our clients. Hey, here's what we're undercounting. We can think about that as gravy, but from an attribution perspective, just with the eye on being very tight and very conservative with what we're really attributing, we will step aside to any other paid channel.
That's wonderful, but I also think that brands should look at that data and really question their other channels, right? Not
For sure.
just, you're obviously helping them out there. Do brands typically say, okay, this is what NeonPixel is saying on the most aggressive, right? But then, if we were to give them all the credit that they're not taking credit for, it's the other extreme, right? So maybe do they usually say, okay, we'll just go somewhere in the middle, or do they just go with your numbers, or does it really just depend by the client?
It's all over the map. And frankly, these days, a lot of them are turning to MTAs and MMM models to try to figure out like the mix. It's very difficult because, if frankly, in some ways we're competing, like we kind of said already, with Meta on budget here, and Meta's using 28-day view through in their siloed reporting. And so how do we compare those two things, right? So it's just trying to do everything we can to triangulate without actually doing holdout testing, frankly, I think is what most folks do. And then most folks get cornered through whatever goals or whatever leadership that finally we got to know what's incremental. And that's where they turn to running holdout tests on every channel. And
No, I was just going to say, it's interesting what you just said, because I think marketers sometimes forget to compare data apples to apples, right? And I have a client that I work with that uses their trade desk attribution window for audio, right? And she tells me that they're using 90-day attribution windows, and I'm thinking, who in there? I can't remember what I did 9 minutes ago. No, it's 90 days ago. How can you be giving somebody credit for that? It's astonishing. But yeah, if you're going to compare channels, you better make sure it's the same attribution for sure. Can you talk to us about, maybe pick a client, maybe a lot of listeners might know that came in, maybe they were skeptical, maybe they were just excited and curious, and that you had to win them over. Talk to us about like how they came into the situation and ultimately what happened.
Yeah, great story on this. Hexclad comes to mind. I don't know if you know them well. They're a
Sure.
growth brand.
Frying
Uh,
pans, right?
yeah, that's exactly, and it's really cool technology. It's like a hybrid between a non-stick and a stainless steel, so you get kind of benefits of both. Partially owned by Gordon Ramsay, so really great growth brand. They had been doing a bit of TV, but most of their budget, I think, was spent traditional sources, search and social, and what we would all think of. The TV was limited because this was not being run by brand marketers. The TV budget was being run by performance marketers. And these guys knew TV feels good. This is right for a brand of our size and our growth trajectory. And we have Gordon Ramsay in our commercials. TV feels right for us. But they had a very hard time investing dollars in television because, frankly, like, they're professional gamblers. They need to have return on their investment to
Right.
do well. And they didn't know that if that was a good gamble or not. And so they were spending, I won't get into specifics, but very, very few dollars, like single digit percentage of budget, I'm guessing, on television. When we met them, I can't remember how, I think it may have been another client referral. And they were a bit skeptical at first. But when we walked them through the details of the very conservative tracking and attribution and the ability to participate in their third-party attribution and holdout testing, they bought into the idea of, let's do a pilot. We always start low just to prove out the concept, and we did the same with these guys. This was going into Q4 though. And so we had initial very, very strong results on the early days of the pilot, and we ramped up quickly. And so by the end of holiday shipping cutoff in December, we ended up being a significant part of their top of funnel marketing budget to drive traffic to the site. I don't want to give any confidential information or specifics here, but the other factor I can share, again, with this apples to oranges comparison to channels like Meta on attribution, we were still crushing the field from CPA perspectives. And so they are looking at CTV as probably being, number 2 line item in their budget this year. And they are getting into incrementality testing for further validation. But that's a great use case of a brand that just exploded their ability to scale with TV that they never thought was possible, even though they were already doing it.
That's a great story. You're able to sort of validate what people already thought, right? That there's power in TV, but couldn't measure it. So, it was hard to really commit to it. What's the long-term vision, or as long as you can say long-term in this business, of the company, right? What's the roadmap look like, even if we just want to talk about the short term?
Yeah, I mean, it's really more of what we've been doing, which is making TV a true performance channel. Most of the time when I talk to folks, I ask them, have you tried TV? In a lot of cases, they say, yeah, it did not work for us. And so what's my long-term vision is convincing them that they just had the wrong horse in the right race here, right? There is so much opportunity in this industry. And so our roadmap is working on ways to further refine the algorithms that are making better decisions. Something we haven't gotten into, for example, on the call yet is audience targeting. So we've talked a lot about tracking and attribution. But for instance, historically, TV, you were guessing, like, what show is our prospective audience watching and how do I target them there? We don't have to do that. We can use third-party audiences and buyer intent graph information to handpick the exact right households to suit the brand's marketing personas and demographics and people that are in market to buy their products. Now, if you think about it, because we know, did an impression lead to a visit that led to a conversion, we can track all this in real time. It allows us to report back to ourselves on what audiences worked really well for this campaign and which ones did not. And we've been finding it's not even about individual audiences, it's about clusters of audiences. So I might find your vehicle, your income, your credit usage mixed with the fact that you're in market to buy a new vehicle, just making that up.
Yeah.
But it's those 5 factors that lead you to being ideal to visit and convert on the site. So our roadmap is really related to additional optimization around any automation we can do to make the campaigns perform better on their own without human intervention.
That's excellent. Okay.
hmm
Um, how does somebody get started?
Yeah, it's super easy. Tags go on the site, usually through some kind of tag manager like GTM. We'd want to understand the, again, demographics and buyer personas and even top search keywords so we can build the right audience targeting for prospecting. If the brand has a big goal of new to file, we will want to take in their maybe 12 or 24-month CRM list to exclude those people from our top of funnel prospecting campaigns. And that's very common in the last year or two. New to file is coming up more and more as a goal alongside just return on ad spend. We need net new customers, right?
Yep.
And so we can do CRM exclusions. And so we're
cool.
going after a very, again, new to file rich list when we do launch. Outside of that, we do a pilot IO. We start usually with 60 days, but all parties have a 48-hour out. And so we're not very unusual, I feel like, in the market today to do this. But again, it's my time with these marketers over the years that has told me they're willing to try stuff. It just can't be a marriage. We need to have a great first date. And so we start things out with a very low commitment pilot. The downside risk is virtually nothing for them. And we prove it out. And once we have live campaign data, we're able to build out scaled projections to understand how big can we take this and still maintain their performance goals. Now,
I like that.
The elephant in the room may be, for those that are not doing a lot of TV, creative, right? Now, we have both in-house and external partners that very inexpensively, compared to what you might imagine at least, do post-production work to take existing video assets and turn those into very performance optimized working 30-second commercials. So if there is kind of a hitch, it usually lies in that area in terms of getting started.
Yeah, a little easier to get somebody to come over that's already doing TV. I'm sure that has its challenges too if they're not buying into the concept. Do you find that brands will want to deliver different messaging to different audiences based on your targeting? And do you recommend that?
That's that's the 401 classes. We'll start with 101, right? By the way, I didn't mention this on like what it takes to get started, but we even do a checkpoint before ever beginning a pilot, which is we'll run projections. What do we think we're going to hit, at different levels of spend? And if it's not a win-win, if we cannot hit their goals with incrementality discounts in mind, then let's not even bother to do this, right? So we would generally start simple with more broad campaigns. By the way, prospecting, everybody does. Most folks also do television retargeting because it's actually more effective than the banner ads that you and I were used to back in the day. And so we would prove that we can hit performance goals on a more simple basis, not make it overly complex to get started. And then it's when we start to think about optimizing that we can talk to different audiences differently, whether that's based on the audience targeting for prospecting or even with, we'll see different creatives work better for retargeting than we do for prospecting.
Makes sense.
So it's things like that we'll get into over time.
Yeah, that makes sense. Are there any common pitfalls or mistakes that marketers, hopefully you prevent them from making, but that you see coming?
Yeah. Not following the things that we would probably online advertising think are no-brainer best practices that we all use, like big calls to action, making it where a second grader could see what they're supposed to do to convert type of situation, right? And if you think about most TV commercials don't have a website address in them. So that's something that sometimes the creative folks at bigger brands will get sensitive. No, we don't want the website address in the commercial. What if I told you it doubled the visit rate? Would you be interested in adding your URL to the TV commercial? So yeah, we have a set of best practices. Being too limiting or too broad on audiences is another possible pitfall. So we're full service. It's the analogy I use a lot is it's a gym membership for somebody that wants to get in shape. We'll go to the gym for them because not every part of going to the gym is fun, right? And there's parts of what we're going to need to do on the back end that we'll handle the heavy lifting to make sure we're getting to the right place from a goal perspective.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Okay, Brooke, thank you so much for being here. That's going to be a wrap for our show this week. This was really helpful. But until next time, don't get lost in the matrix.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
This episode of the Martech Matrix was brought to you by the Cogent Collective, a community for marketing and e-commerce leaders. Learn more and inquire about membership at cogentcollective.com. For show notes and information on upcoming episodes, head on over to the martechmatrix.com where you can submit questions for upcoming guests. Once again, thank you, Brooke, for joining us today and educating our audience on NeonPixel and performance CTV. If you would like to learn more about NeonPixel and see if they are a good fit for your marketing strategy, send Sean a note to sean@cogentcollective.com. New episodes of the Martech Matrix podcast will drop every Monday. So be sure to subscribe with your favorite podcast network so you can stay on top of what's happening in the Matrix. Next week, Yuri Strauss, co-founder and CEO of WebEyes, will enter the Matrix to discuss how e-commerce merchants can address an $18 billion problem by identifying and addressing friction in the shopper journey before the shopper leaves without purchasing. Until then, don't get lost in the Martech Matrix.